So before, of course, I start, I just want to start by saying this that I really do appreciate and thank every single one of you. I know under this whole pandemic, it's just been kind of nuts and crazy, but that doesn't mean that we have to be. But I do appreciate and I thank all of you guys for all of your cooperation throughout this whole entire dark time. But we are going to get through this together. And so I wanted to talk about something here as I start this segment from here. I was talking to a former NFL player. He's also an analyst as well. Maybe you've heard of him. Goes by Maurice Jones-Drew, former Jaguar Raider. Great guy, nice guy. We got a chance to talk a bunch about a few things, and we started to talk a lot about the NFL. And one person that we ended up talking about was, of course, Cam Newton. Cam Newton, of course, everybody wants to start talking about him, figuring out where he's going to go. I've already made my decisions, and I could tell you, especially from a Charger fan behind the mic, Cam Newton's not going to the Chargers. So I want to break it down in a couple of segments here on this. So first and foremost, Cam right now is without a job. And here's what we can think about when we talk about Cam Newton. Well, the fact he's a former Heisman Trophy winner, and he was also won the national championship with Auburn. He also came into the league, and he was a Rookie of the Year, and he also won an MVP in 2015. Took the Panthers to a Super Bowl, but then eventually lost it. And everybody's asking themselves, well, why does Cam not have a job? What are all these NFL owners? What are they doing? Cam's a superstar. And listen, besides the point, all the accolades about Cam Newton. Let me enlighten you a little bit about life. Because listen, life itself is not fair. Okay? We may have good things that may happen. And then sometimes too, we often take a toll. And it is tough. So in this case with Cam Newton, why does he not have a job? Well, it's not because of the accolades. Okay? Most of that is because, and you have to think about exactly the type of people that we are, even when it comes to talking about sports. There's a lot of quote unquote recency bias. Things that have happened recently. I've said this multiple times. Since the 2015 campaign for Cam Newton, Cam has not looked and played the same. Okay, we've been discussing about the ankle injury. We've been discussing about the shoulder injury. There have been problems over and over. And there's questions about Cam. Can he stay healthy? Can he actually play the same as he once was? Here's one thing that we have to understand in business. Okay, because I do work in a business. Okay? And one of the things that you have to realize is that certain owners, general managers, they usually do not look at a person when it comes to accolades. They don't. Okay? Hate to burst your bubble for certain people who have earned their stripes, whether you've gone to college or whether you've gone to a tech school, wherever you've been. Most owners and companies or in Fortune 500 businesses don't look and pay attention at accolades all that much. What they turn to is production levels, but they also see it with their own eyes. Okay, you understand what I'm talking about. So when it comes to Cam Newton and the production that he's had since 2015, okay, he hasn't looked the same. Injuries have taken a toll. And then that's what got everybody questioning why he doesn't have a job yet. Well, here's the other thing. There are lots of things that have distracted Cam. Okay, fashion can be one of them. He's very flashy at that. And we know that that's something that's a part of his brand. That's how he protects his brand. Cam, in certain ways, and I can tell you this, I was not sold on Cam. Okay, I thought he was a nice kid. I thought he was a great player. He's hyper athletic, much like a Russell Westbrook in the NBA. Okay, the two of them together are hyper athletic players. Okay, the difference is Westbrook can't shoot threes. Cam can't throw downfield. If you look at how Cam throws a ball, he throws balls accurate when they're short or when they're midfield. He doesn't usually throw them deep downfield and is not as accurate. Okay? Here's my part on why the Chargers would not be a fit for Cam Newton. Okay? Cam and Tyrod Taylor, both of them have almost close to the same completion percentages. Tyrod only has the edge by 61%, while Cam is sitting at 59. But again, stats will tell you lots of things. The thing of it is that the Chargers are ready for something new. They're ready for the next future franchise quarterback, which it could be anybody. Could be Joe Burrow, could be Tua, could be Justin Herbert or Jordan Love. The Chargers are not going to be willing to gamble on someone like Cam. Because here's the other thing that me and MJD ended up talking about is when Cam goes into an organization, that organization has to deal with Cam and they have to be sold on Cam, which means if Cam was looking to take a backup job, that's going to be difficult because Cam is fighting for a starting job in this league, but he's not going to get one because almost half, if not 3/4 of the league already have their quarterbacks, and some of them are actually waiting for the future quarterbacks to come in from the draft. That's the reality. Okay, and yes, it is terrible to see something like that because we all wish Cam would at least have a starting job somewhere, but that's not going to happen. And parts of those reasons is Cam focused on football because a lot of us see him in fashions on his his social medias. We often sometimes kind of see by his judgment calls as a quarterback and how he deals with certain situations. I can tell you that Super Bowl, and a lot of people are going, Jake, you're going way far back. You're reminding us again about the Super Bowl. Well, here's the thing. That was one of those things. That was one of the reasons. And then it wasn't until, I don't know, how about checking the last couple of primetime games with Cam? Did you ever notice something different about him? That's what's kind of difficult about this. Now, here's what me and MJD ended up talking about possible landing spots for Cam. Okay. Now, he mentioned about a couple of teams. He mentioned about New England, he mentioned about Chicago, and he mentioned about Jacksonville. Me, on the other hand, I thought of Philadelphia because all four of those organizations run on different types of speeds in the game. Ones that I think can fit Cam Newton, whether he takes a backup role or he doesn't. Now, let's break it down. Why would Jacksonville be a very good spot? Well, you have to think of at least that gives insurance for Gardner Minshew because Minshew Mania is pretty much taken over in Jacksonville. And Nick Foles has already moved to Chicago, and he's going to now have to compete for that quarterback spot against Mitch Trubisky. But Jacksonville at this point, they need some sort of star power because years ago, it used to be about that Jacksonville defense. Everybody calls Saxonville. They need something there in that building. Something now that is going to attract fans. They're going to get fans in the seats, which is why I think that it's an interesting destination. Let's talk about New England. Okay, I didn't truly agree with the New England part. Only because, do you think Bill Belichick, and I'm not doubting his work, but do you think Belichick would be willing to bring in a guy like Cam Newton into the picture in a place that is strict, that says, do your job, You think Cam might end up doing the job in New England? From what I've heard from sources, they're sold on Jarrett Stidham. They love the kid. They've seen what he's done in practice. They had a lot of feedbacks from a lot of current players, even the McCourty twins. Okay, they ended up saying, wow, he's got a hell of an arm. So they're sold on Stidham. I'm not sure if they're going to draft another quarterback or if they're going to tank and wait until Trevor Lawrence comes in. I don't know what the plan is for New England. But all I know is I know that Bill is the type of person that has a plan. Then, of course, finally, there's the Chicago Bears. Because what was interesting is that he mentioned that there was a play style in college that Cam is used to, that Chicago performs. Now, and I think it's kind of interesting because you would think of Chicago. You would think of how good that their defense was built. And then you got a couple of good wide receivers, Allen Robinson. But there's still some pieces to Chicago that they need to fix. But bringing in Nick Foles was perfect because at least now that's going to light the fire to Mitch Trubisky to now insert quarterback competition because Foles and Nagy go years back in Andy Reid's coaching tree in Kansas City. Okay, when Foles ended up becoming a backup for the Chiefs, Nagy worked with him, and Nagy loved what he saw. So I thought that was interesting to bring him into Chicago, but I think it's a smart fit. But for Cam Newton, the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, I didn't believe it at first. I was hearing a lot of sources about it, but then once I started to kind of dig in, it made sense. Because think of it this way, and I know a lot of people who are Philadelphia Eagle fans. I have a friend of mine who's a diehard Eagle fan. Okay, and I'm sure I probably am going to reach him to this question, of how you would feel if Cam Newton went to Philly. Think of it this way and hear me out. Doug Peterson. Okay, a lot of people seem to doubt and criticize his coaching method. Okay, what happened with the Philadelphia Eagles last year? Okay, they were injury prone. They lost a lot of really good players, including your number 1 and number 2 wide receivers in the league. Okay, and then you had the defense that got shook up. Secondaries were not great, but they still went to the playoffs. And a lot of Philly fans criticized and doubted Carson Wentz, which I've said multiple times that Carson Wentz is your future. Carson Wentz is your franchise quarterback. But here's why that I think Cam Newton would be an interesting fit. Because when Nick Foles was in Philadelphia, Doug Peterson was able to work with all the quarterbacks, including Carson Wentz and even Sudfeld, and they got used to the playbook. They also got used to the play style and the plan. Because you have to think about, because a lot of people love to argue about this. Who was the better quarterback, Carson Wentz or Nick Foles? By far, Carson Wentz. It's not even close. So stop the comparisons. Okay? Carson Wentz, honestly, here's the thing, and this is what people have a tendency to forget. Never forget about the guy who had an MVP run, who also punched a ticket in the playoffs, who got you there. Okay, the rest of it was all a team effort, including Nick Foles. But the thing that I like about Cam Newton, and much like Doug Peterson is the type of person that likes to work with certain quarterbacks. Very, very systematic. That's how it works. You have to think about all the coaches in the league, but 2 coaching trees that have been well known that we've seen a lot. Belichick and Andy Reid's coaching trees. Okay. In Belichick's side, you've had Matt Patricia, Josh McDaniels, who is still in New England, Joe Judge, and then there's Brian Flores. Now, Brian Flores, what people don't realize, he did fix that Miami defense. Okay, in the last couple of games, I believe it was the last 4 games of the season, that defense was solid. And this is after Minkah Fitzpatrick left for Pittsburgh, which he did fine in, and they weren't even worried about that. Now you bring in Byron Jones and Kyle Van Noy. That's not a coach that I would shake my head off at. I wouldn't. Now, a lot of questions are to be said about how Joe Judge's performance is going to be in New York. But think of it this way. Special teams guy, much like John Harbaugh. Okay, John Harbaugh years ago was a special teams guy. And John Harbaugh knew how to work that Baltimore special teams, that defense, and of course the offense, whether it was Joe Flacco or Lamar Jackson. He knew how to work with it. But of course, everybody has their opinions. Now, of course, there's Andy Reid's coaching tree, which involved Matt Nagy and Doug Peterson. John Harbaugh was part of that tree as well. But here's the one thing you can look at with all these coaches. Andy Reid is just he's an offensive genius. Okay, here's the thing. He had everything planned. He had everything set and solid. The problem of it is he just didn't have the specialty quarterback. That's nothing against Donovan McNabb. But once Patrick Mahomes came into the league, he finally got it to work. Finally got the plan to work. But under his coaching tree, Doug Peterson, he's won a Super Bowl. He's the kind of guy that's a grinder. Okay? He grinds out every single possibility in the league. Because isn't that what the NFL is all filled with? Grinders, hard workers, the ones who go through a lot of injuries. Doug Peterson's been able to figure that out. He's worked well with Carson Wentz. He's worked well with Nick Foles. What's to say that Doug Peterson can't work well with Cam? And listen, I understand a lot of people's questions about, is Cam focused? Is Cam focused on football? Okay, with all the fashionista and sometimes all of his, his press plays, on the podium. I get it. But think about it. Here's another thing you have to note. Matt Nagy. Okay, Chicago's got an interesting defense. And plus Matt Nagy dealt with Mitch Trubisky. And they still made the playoffs. How's that so? Well, you have to look at the coaching tree. Andy Reid. The second you learn from a really nice guy and a smart guy, and you implement a lot of his works, it gets you far. But to top it all off with Cam Newton, I feel like Philadelphia would be an interesting place. Because here's the interesting thing about him. They used to run on speed. Okay, remember in the days when they had Michael Vick? That ran with speed. Okay, Cam may be different from Michael Vick. I get that. But think about that. They run off a lot of speed. And here's what's interesting. Philadelphia did not have a legitimate running back in the last 3 years. Not until Miles Sanders came along. Now they've got a legitimate running back who works, who does a lot. And I think he'll be productive next season. But if you had to think of somebody as far as, can Cam take a backup job? I feel like that's the perfect insurance plan. If you're the Philadelphia Eagles, Doug Peterson, Carson Wentz, you don't think Cam would be willing to learn something new? Hopefully so, and only time will tell. But I just look at this. And you're going to get your number 1s and 2s back at wide receiver. You're probably going to trust your hands in J.J. Arcega-Whiteside as your number 3. But Philadelphia, I just think of this as a very interesting move. And look, if you asked me, I still think that the XFL is still on the table. All right, and a lot of people don't really believe me. But again, if all else fails, why not? Cam Newton's the kind of guy that he likes to showcase his fashion and he likes to showcase his brand. That's merchandising. That's marketing. That's also ratings on television. because everybody wants to tune in. They don't want to watch all of the XFL teams. They just want to watch Cam. They just want to watch Super Cam. See him showcase his skills. A lot of people, look, you may not agree with me, and that's fine. Okay, I'm an opinionist, much like a lot of people, but I play a very mellow and flowed ground game. Okay, I'm very leveled, even keeled. But I'm just saying, possibilities are there. Possibilities are there. But I just think that if you had to look for something like that between Jacksonville, New England, Chicago, Philly, I would trust and take my skills out to Philly. But that's if he's willing to take the backup role.